My mother accidentally let her dog rip my daughter's bridesmaid dress 2 hours before the ceremony. My sister said, "It was an accident. Stop being dramatic." So I canceled the photographer deposit under my name and froze the hotel block payment. The real shock came at 9 a.m. The thread count was 220. I counted it 3 times before cutting the first panel because my grandmother Colette always said you measure fabric the way you measure a promise. Once for hope, twice for certainty. 3 times because you will not get the hours back if you are wrong. 91 evenings. That is how long the dress took. Olive would sit on the floor beside my sewing table after homework, her knees pulled up, watching the needle pull thread through French seams. She was 11. She did not ask questions. She watched. Sometimes she handed me pins without being told, and every time she did, I thought of Colette doing the same thing with me 30 years ago in a kitchen that smelled like starch and black tea. The fabric was ivory Dupioni silk from Colette's sewing kit. My grandmother left that kit to me when she died 7 years ago. Not to my mother, not to my sister Nina, to me. Because I was the one who sat beside her. I was the one who learned to cut on the grain, press a seam open, and trust my hands more than the pattern. That kit, those shears, that fabric, they were not an inheritance. They were a conversation she wanted to keep having after she was gone. 2 hours before my sister's wedding ceremony, I walked into the guest bedroom at my mother's house to give the dress a final steam. The door was open. Duchess, my mother's golden retriever, was standing on the bed with her front paws on the bodice. 3 claw marks ran diagonally across the skirt panel. The hem was dark with saliva. The beading I had hand-stitched along the neckline, 46 seed pearls, each one placed with a pair of tweezers under a magnifying lamp, was scattered across the comforter like spilled rice. 91 evenings. Gone in the time it took me to walk downstairs and pour a glass of water. I picked up the dress. The silk was still warm from the iron. It hung from my hands in 2 pieces where the waistline seam had separated. Duchess jumped off the bed and walked past me with her tail wagging, like she had done nothing at all. Olive was in the hallway. She looked at the fabric and her chin started to tremble. She pressed her lips together the way children do when they are trying to be older than they are. And that look on my daughter's face was the thing I carried into every decision I made over the next 5 days. "Mom," she said, "can you fix it?" The bodice was shredded. The skirt had claw marks through 3 layers. There was nothing left to fix. I found my mother, Wanda, in the bridal suite. Nina was in her gown. The makeup artist was blending foundation along Nina's jaw. 2 of Nina's bridesmaids sat on the love seat scrolling their phones. 5 people in that room when I walked in holding 91 evenings of destroyed silk. "Mom," I said. Duchess destroyed Olive's dress. Wanda did not turn around. She was adjusting Nina's veil in the mirror. She must have gotten into the room. "You probably left the door open. These things happen. The door was closed when I left." "Well, it was open when the dog found it." "That is how doors work, Audrey." Nina looked at me through the mirror's reflection. "It was an accident. Stop being dramatic. We are 90 minutes from the ceremony." Wanda turned then. She looked at the fabric in my hands, and her mouth did something between a smile and a shrug. "You spent 3 months sewing a little costume for a girl who trips over flat ground, and you want me to hold up my daughter's wedding for it? Your grandmother filled your head with thread and scissors because she felt sorry for you. Nobody asked you to make that dress. Nobody asked you to pay for any of this. You write numbers in a cubicle, Audrey. You are not the bride. You are not the mother of the bride. You are the one who writes the checks because you married a man who pours concrete, and that is the only thing about you anyone in this family has ever needed." The makeup artist's brush stopped moving. One of the bridesmaids on the love seat looked up from her phone. The other one put her phone face down on the cushion. Nina did not say a word. 5 witnesses, and not one of them spoke. I walked out of that room with the dress folded over my arm. In the hallway, I sat on the bench by the staircase and made 2 phone calls. The first was to Sebastian Drake, the photographer. The contract was in my name, not Nina's name, not Wanda's name. Mine, I was listed as the sole contracting client and payment guarantor. Nina appeared only as the event subject, $9,500 on my visa, ending in 4471. Sebastian, this is Audrey Lawson. I am withdrawing my authorization as contracting client and removing my payment method. Yes, I understand the deposit is non-refundable. Please confirm the withdrawal in writing to my email. Sebastian paused for 3 seconds, then said he would contact the bride directly to see if she wished to continue under a new payment arrangement. He called Nina 40 minutes later. Nina could not produce a credit card that would hold a $9,500 contract. Sebastian packed his equipment and did not come. The second call was to the Wyndham on Route 9. 14 rooms held under a master guarantee on my credit card. $14,200. None of the rooms had been individually guaranteed by guests yet because Wanda had told everyone the rooms were taken care of. They were, by me. This is Audrey Lawson, the cardholder on Group Block Confirmation WB6619. I need to release my card from the master guarantee. The front desk manager explained that without a master guarantee, each guest would need to provide a personal card by 6 p.m. or the reservation would release. I told her to contact each guest individually. She said she would. Garrett was waiting by the car with Olive. He saw my face and did not ask. Olive sat in the back seat wearing her daisy print church dress. The ruined bridesmaid dress folded in a grocery bag on the floor beside her feet. We drove to the ceremony. We sat in the 4th row. Olive sat between Garrett and me in her daisy print church dress, while every other girl in the bridal party wore matching lavender chiffon. She kept her hands folded in her lap and did not look at the other bridesmaids. She did not ask why she was sitting in the pews instead of standing at the altar. She already knew. The ceremony started 12 minutes late because Nina kept looking toward the back of the venue for the photographer. She scanned the entrance 3 times before the officiant began. Nobody arrived with a camera bag. Nobody set up a tripod or adjusted a lens. The only photos of my sister's wedding were taken on phones by guests who did not know they were the backup plan. During the reception, the hotel front desk called Nina's phone. Several out-of-town guests had not provided personal cards by the deadline, and the Wyndham needed authorization from the event organizer to hold those rooms. Wanda took the phone from Nina's hand and walked into the hallway. She came back 4 minutes later and sat down without a word. Her face was the color of drywall. Most guests managed to rebook or provide their own cards, but the scramble was visible. 20 minutes later, Theo's father leaned across the table toward Theo and said, loud enough for 3 neighboring tables to hear. The hotel manager told me the room block was originally under the name Audrey Lawson, not Wanda Sutton. I thought your mother-in-law was handling the accommodations. Theo looked at Nina. Nina looked at Wanda. Wanda picked up her water glass and drank from it without swallowing. A woman from Wanda's church, seated 2 chairs away, looked at Wanda, then at Nina, then excused herself to the restroom. She did not come back to the table. 2 of Theo's college friends, seated at the next table, stopped eating and looked at each other in the way people look at each other when they realize they are watching something they were not supposed to see. If you are new here, welcome to Family Secret Tales. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do not miss what happens next. Nobody at that reception asked me about the photographer. Nobody asked me about the rooms. But by the time the caterer cleared the last plate, at least 4 guests had looked at me with a question on their face they did not have the nerve to ask out loud. One of them, Theo's aunt, caught my eye from across the room and mouthed the word sorry. She did not know the half of it. Garrett drove us home in silence. Olive fell asleep in the back seat with her forehead against the window, her church shoes kicked off and lying sideways on the floor mat. I carried her inside, tucked the blanket up to her chin, and pulled a strand of hair off her forehead. She had not complained once all day. Not about the dress, not about the church clothes, not about sitting in the pews. That silence from an 11-year-old was louder than anything Wanda had said in the bridal suite. I went to the kitchen table. Colette's sewing shears were where I had left them that morning, resting on the pattern guide beside a spool of ivory thread that would never be needed again. The remnants of the destroyed dress were draped over the back of a dining chair, the silk already starting to curl at the torn edges. I sat there until midnight, not angry, not sad, something colder, something that required no sleep and made every number in my life feel suddenly negotiable. To understand why I made those calls, you need to understand what that wedding actually cost, not the sticker price, the human price. My father, Roy Sutton, died 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. 8 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. The last thing he said to me, sitting in a recliner that smelled like antiseptic and the mint gum his nurses kept on the windowsill, was, "Take care of them. Audrey." He meant Wanda. He meant Nina. He meant the family he was leaving behind, the bills he could not finish paying, the furnace that needed replacing, the roof that leaked over the upstairs bathroom. I took care of them. $1,200 a month, direct transfer to Wanda's checking account for 36 consecutive months. That was $43,200 before Nina ever picked a wedding venue. That money covered Wanda's mortgage supplement, her car insurance, her medications, and every emergency she could not handle alone. I paid Wanda's property taxes twice. I paid for a new furnace in January when her old one died, $4,100, installed on a Tuesday while I was at work. 2 weeks later, Nina mentioned at dinner that Mom had handled the furnace herself. "She is so independent," Nina said, reaching for the bread basket. Wanda sat across the table with her hands folded and did not correct it. She looked at me once, briefly, the way a shoplifter looks at the security camera, and then she looked away. That was the first time I understood that my money was being spent and my name was being erased in the same transaction. It happened again with the roof repair, again with the property tax. Every time I paid for something, Wanda absorbed the credit, and nobody in the family knew the difference because nobody had ever asked. When Nina got engaged to Theo Price, Wanda called me, not to celebrate, to plan. "Your father would have wanted you to help your sister," she said, and I could hear the kitchen timer beeping in the background like punctuation. She cannot afford the kind of wedding Theo's family expects, so I helped. The photographer deposit, $9,500, signed under my name because Nina's credit was not strong enough to hold the contract. The hotel room block guarantee, $14,200 on my visa, 14 rooms for out-of-town guests who would never know whose card number was on file. The rehearsal dinner at Amaro's, $3,800, including the private dining room Nina insisted on because Theo's parents expected a certain standard. The floral surcharge and catering add-on when Nina changed the menu 6 weeks before the wedding, $6,500. $34,000 total. Pulled from the savings account Garrett and I had built over 4 years of careful budgeting, packed lunches, and saying no to the vacation Olive kept asking about, the one with the water slides in Tennessee. She had printed the brochure and taped it to the refrigerator. It stayed there for 11 months before I quietly took it down one night after she went to bed. Wanda paid nothing. Nina paid nothing. Theo contributed his share for the DJ and the bar, which Wanda praised at every opportunity. But Wanda told the Price family that she was covering the wedding expenses. She used the word gift the way some people use the word investment, with a smile that suggested generosity and a posture that demanded gratitude. It cost her nothing because it cost me everything, and not one person at that wedding who ate the dinner I paid for or slept in the room I guaranteed knew my name was attached to a single receipt. And the dress, the 981 evenings, The ivory Dupioni silk from Colette's sewing kit, the last yards of it, fabric I could never replace because Colette bought it in 1987 from a shop in Montreal that no longer exists. That fabric was not a supply. It was a conversation with a dead woman who believed in the weight of things made by hand. Olive wore that dress for a fitting 3 weeks before the wedding. She stood in front of the hallway mirror and turned in a slow circle, watching the skirt move. She did not say anything. She just smiled, and for 1 second she looked exactly like Colette, who smiled the same way when something she had made turned out the way she imagined it. Wanda saw that fitting. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, and said, "That is a lot of effort for a bridesmaid." Then she walked away. I should have heard the warning in that sentence. I did not. The morning after the wedding, Sunday, June 15, I woke at 6:40 a.m. Garrett was still asleep. Olive was still asleep. The house was quiet in the way houses are quiet when something is about to arrive. At 7:15, my doorbell rang. I opened the front door and found Louise, Garrett's mother, standing on the porch holding a garment bag and a portable sewing machine. She looked past me into the hallway where the destroyed dress was still draped over the back of a chair, the torn silk catching the morning light. Louise did not ask what happened. Garrett had called her. She already knew. "I cannot fix what your mother did," Louise said, "but I can sit here while you figure out what you want to do next." She came inside, set up her sewing machine at the far end of the kitchen table, and hemmed a curtain she had brought from home. She did not speak again for 40 minutes. She just sewed. Present, quiet, steady, the hum of her machine mixed with the sound of the coffee maker. And for 40 minutes, the kitchen felt like a place where someone cared about the person sitting in it. While Louise sewed, I sat with my phone and began preserving the family group thread, screenshotting every message from the day before. That was when I saw it. A message from Wanda's number sent to the group thread at 10:47 am on June 14, "Just leave the bedroom door open. She will not have time to fix it." Wanda had meant to send it to Nina privately. She had sent it to the group instead. Duchess was in the room at 11:58, 1 hour and 11 minutes later. I stared at the message, then screenshot it twice, emailed both copies to myself, and put the phone face down on the table. I almost called Wanda that morning. I had the phone in my hand, her name on the screen. But then I looked up and saw Olive's reflection in the kitchen window. She was in the hallway behind me, still in her pajamas, watching me the way she always watched me, and I put the phone down. At 9:03 a.m., my phone vibrated. A push notification from my credit monitoring service, the one I had been paying $42 a month for since I started working at First Continental Bank 7 years ago. The alert read, "New account detected." Account type, revolving credit. Issuer, First Regional Bank. Balance, $26,011.47. Cardholder Audrey M. Lawson. The issuer had reported the account to the Bureau for the first time after the first statement cycle closed, and the monitoring service flagged it within hours. I had not opened a credit card. I had not applied for a credit card. I had not walked into any branch of First Regional Bank at any point in my adult life. Someone had opened a credit card in my name, run up $26,000 in charges, and left it sitting on my credit report like a stain on a tablecloth. For 30 seconds, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the screen. Then something shifted. The same part of my brain that evaluates commercial loan applications, that reads credit reports for inconsistencies, that flags risk patterns other analysts overlook, activated, not panic. Process. Step 1, screenshot the alert. Step 2, call the issuing bank. Step 3, file an identity theft report. Step 4, call Hector Vega for advice. I called First Regional's fraud hotline at 9:14 a.m. The representative confirmed the account existed under my Social Security number, froze the card immediately, and opened an identity theft case. She told me a copy of the original application would be mailed to my verified address within 5 business days after identity confirmation. I filed an FTC identity theft affidavit online before the call was even over. Then, I called Hector Vega. Hector runs the fraud investigations unit at First Continental. He is not my manager. He is 3 departments over and 2 floors up. But we had worked together on a commercial lending fraud referral 18 months ago, and he gave me his direct number afterward. If you ever see something that does not belong on your own file, he said, call me before you call anyone else. I called him at 9:21 a.m. on a Sunday morning. He picked up on the 3rd ring. Hector, this is Audrey Lawson from Credit Risk. Someone opened a card in my name at First Regional. $26,000 balance. I have already called the issuer and filed the FTC affidavit. I need your advice on preserving my credit file and preparing the police report. He was quiet for 2 seconds. Good. You did the right steps. Send me the alert screenshot and I will help you draft the identity theft declaration for your bureau dispute on Monday. If they forged your signature on that application, this is not a banking issue. This is a criminal matter. Monday morning, my desk at First Continental, 7th floor. I pulled my consumer credit report through the monitoring service, not through any internal bank system, and confirmed the account details. The card had been opened on May 2 at First Regional's Oak Street branch. That branch is 6 blocks from my mother's house. The application listed my social security number, my date of birth, and Wanda's home address as the mailing address. The statements had been going to her house for 6 weeks. If you are enjoying this story, please like the video and subscribe to Family Secret Tales. Trust me, you do not want to miss what I found next. The application copy arrived from First Regional on Wednesday. I opened it at the kitchen table with the care I use when I open a disputed loan file at work. The primary applicant's signature on line 12 read Audrey M. Lawson, but it was not my handwriting. The loops were too wide, the pressure too heavy. Someone had forged my signature. Below it, on line 14, joint applicant. Nina Sutton. That one was real. I recognized her looping cursive, the same handwriting she used to sign birthday cards. My sister had knowingly signed as joint applicant on a credit card opened with my forged name. The banker's processing notes, stapled to the back, recorded that the primary applicant's identity had been verified through a photocopy of a driver's license presented by applicant's mother, who accompanied her to the branch. Wanda had walked into that bank with a photocopy of my ID and forged my name. Nina sat beside her and signed. I almost closed the file. I had my hand on the folder tab, ready to slide it into the drawer where I keep things I do not want to think about. But Nina's handwriting was right there on line 14, and the drawer stayed open. Hector helped me file a police report Tuesday morning. The officer assigned case number 2026 FR 4471. The statement showed 6 weeks of charges, and once I had them spread across my desk, the patterns were immediate. Breckenridge Mountain Resort, Colorado, $8,200. Reservation for a king suite with mountain view, 7 nights, checked in June 15, the day after the wedding. That was Nina's honeymoon destination. She had posted photos of the lodge 2 days after the ceremony, captioned Paradise with a heart emoji and a tag for Theo. The deposit had been charged on May 9, 1 week after the card was opened. Meridian Spa and Wellness, $3,400 across 4 visits in May and early June. 90-minute sessions, add-on treatments, product purchases. That was Wanda's spa. She went every other Thursday. I knew because she used to ask me to drive her before she remembered I had a full-time job and a daughter who needed to be picked up from school. 16 separate retail transactions at department stores and boutiques in a 30-mile radius of Wanda's house, $14,400. Clothing, handbags, shoes, home decor. A kitchen appliance from a specialty store in the next county. personal shopping. 6 weeks of it, steady as a paycheck, charged to a card with my social security number and a billing address I had never lived at. $26,011. I went through every line. Not a single charge for a wedding vendor. Not a single charge for a florist, caterer, venue, or event service. Every dollar was personal. Every dollar was stolen. My mother had opened a credit card in my name and used it to fund her lifestyle and my sister's honeymoon. My sister had signed the application knowing exactly what it was, and both of them had sat across from me at family dinners for 6 weeks, eaten food I cooked, accepted checks I wrote, and never once looked at me with anything that resembled guilt. I built the evidence file the way I build credit files at work. Chronological, annotated, every statement highlighted in yellow, every charge categorized by type, every date cross-referenced with my own bank statements showing the $34,000 I had actually paid for the wedding that my mother told the prices she funded herself. I printed 2 copies, one for my attorney, one for the folder I would carry to Wanda's kitchen table. $34,000 from my savings account, $26,000 stolen onto a card with my name, $60,000 total. And the only thing I got in return was a shredded dress and a mother who called my grandmother's love pity. Wednesday evening, my phone rang. The caller ID said Theo Price. It was not Theo, it was his mother, Mrs. Lawson. I apologize for calling out of the blue, she said. Her voice was controlled, the way voices are controlled when someone is choosing their words with pliers. The Wyndham sent a billing inquiry to Theo about outstanding charges on the room block. They referenced your name as the original cardholder. I thought Wanda was handling the accommodations. There it was. The thread that once pulled would unravel everything Wanda had spent 3 years stitching together. Mrs. Price, I said, I paid for the photographer, the hotel block, the rehearsal dinner, and the floral surcharge. The total was $34,000. My mother paid nothing. 6 seconds of silence. I counted them. I appreciate you telling me this, she said. No anger in her voice. Something worse. Recalculation. The kind of quiet that happens when someone realizes every number they were given was wrong. After I hung up, I sat in the kitchen and looked at Colette's shears on the cutting table. Heavy steel, black handles, the pivot screw slightly loose the way it had been since 1994, when Colette dropped them on a tile floor and bent the tension spring. She never fixed it. She said the wobble was part of the conversation. I thought about why Wanda did it. Not the credit card, the dress. The specific, deliberate destruction of something I made with Colette's fabric using Colette's tools. Colette taught me to sew when I was 9 years old. She lived with us for 2 summers while Wanda worked double shifts. And in those summers, Colette and I sat at the kitchen table for hours, the sewing machine humming between us. She taught me to pin a pattern, cut on the bias, press a dart, and finish a seam so clean you could run your finger along it with your eyes closed. She called me petite couturière, little seamstress, and she said it the way some grandmothers say my beauty. It was recognition. Wanda never learned. She never wanted to. She resented that her own mother, given a choice between daughter and granddaughter, turned to the one who sat down and reached for the pins. When Colette died, she left the sewing kit to me. The will was specific, not to my family, to Audrey Marie Lawson. Wanda said one sentence at the funeral reception. She always liked you better than her own daughter. 7 years of that sentence sitting in the air between us, and 7 years later, Wanda opened the bedroom door and let Duchess destroy Colette's last yards of ivory Dupioni silk. The dog was not the weapon. The dog was the delivery system. The weapon was 30 years of a mother who could not forgive her own daughter for being loved by the woman who should have loved her instead. Wanda did not destroy a dress. She destroyed Colette's hands, reaching through mine into Olive's generation, and she did it 2 hours before a ceremony she did not pay for, in a house I had been heating for 3 winters. I almost forgave her. Not for the dress, not for the money, for the smallness of it, for the fact that a 63-year-old woman looked at a child's bridesmaid dress and saw an enemy. But then I picked up Colette's shears, felt the wobble in the pivot screw, and remembered that some conversations are not meant to continue with people who never learn to listen. Thursday evening, 5 days after the wedding, my phone rang at 4:40 p.m. "I need you at my house tonight," Wanda said. 7 o'clock. "We need to discuss what you did to your sister's wedding." I drove to Wanda's house with a manila folder on the passenger seat and Colette's shears in my jacket pocket, not as a weapon, as a weight, something to hold on to when the conversation turned the way I knew it would turn. Garrett stayed home with Olive. He kissed me on the forehead before I left and said 3 words, "You have everything." He meant the file. He meant the evidence. He also meant something else, something about the way I had moved through the house that week with a quiet precision he had only seen me use at work. The drive took 14 minutes. I parked on the street instead of the driveway. The way you park when you are not staying long and you want your exit clear. Wanda and Nina were at the kitchen table. The overhead light was on even though it was still daylight outside, and the kitchen smelled like the lavender spray Wanda used when she wanted the house to feel presentable. Roy's photo hung on the wall behind them, the one from the fishing trip in 2019. The year before the diagnosis. He was holding a smallmouth bass with both hands and grinning. Nina was pale but composed, her hands folded in front of her like she was waiting for a meeting she had already rehearsed. She did not look at me when I sat down. Wanda opened. She had been waiting all week for this. "You canceled the photographer. You froze the hotel. My daughter has no professional wedding photos. The guests had to scramble for their own rooms at midnight. Theo's parents are furious. You humiliated this family over a dog getting into a room, and you owe Nina $23,000 in damages. You also owe me an apology." Nina nodded. "You did this over a dress, Audrey, a dress. You could have bought another one." I let them finish. Every word, every accusation, every number they had invented. I sat with my hands on the folder and I waited. When the room was quiet, I said, "Are you done?" Wanda crossed her arms. "Yes." I opened the folder. First, I placed a printed screenshot on the table. "This is a text message sent from your phone, Mom, to the group thread with Nina and me. June 14th, 10:47 a.m. It reads, 'Just leave the bedroom door open. She will not have time to fix it.' Duchess was in the room at 11:58. 1 hour and 11 minutes later. This was not an accident. You planned it." Wanda's mouth opened. That was about something else. What was it about? Silence. Second, I placed 6 pages of credit card statements on the table. This is a First Regional revolving credit account. The cardholder name is Audrey M. Lawson, my name. Forged on the application by someone who walked into the Oak Street branch with a photocopy of my driver's license. The balance is $26,011. The charges include $8,200 at Breckenridge Mountain Resort, which is Nina's honeymoon lodge, $3,400 at Meridian Spa, which is your spa, Mom, and $14,400 in personal retail purchases over 6 weeks. Not one charge is for a wedding vendor. Wanda reached for the papers. I pulled them back. These are copies. The originals are with First Regional's fraud department and the police. Third, I placed the card application on the table and turned it so both of them could read it. Line 14. Joint applicant. Nina Sutton. I looked at my sister. Your signature. Your handwriting. You signed as joint applicant on a credit card opened with my forged signature, and the banker's notes say Mom presented my ID at the branch. Nina's hands dropped from the table to her lap. She did not deny it. She looked at the signature the way someone looks at a photograph of themselves doing something they hoped no one would ever see. I stood up. Forging my signature on a credit application is identity theft. Signing as joint applicant on that application is participation in fraud. Charging $26,000 of personal expenses is unauthorized use. The police report is filed. First Regional's Fraud Department is reviewing the case, and the county prosecutor will receive the full evidence package from my attorney by end of week. I placed both hands on the table. A demand letter is coming. $26,000 in fraudulent charges, $7,800 in property damage for the dress, based on a professional replacement valuation of materials and labor. Cancellation penalties, legal fees, every dollar documented. And Mrs. Price already knows who actually paid for this wedding. She called me Wednesday. The room changed, not dramatically. Quietly, the way a room changes when the person who was supposed to apologize turns out to be the person holding the file. Wanda tried first. Her voice dropped low, the conciliatory register she used when she needed something to disappear. I will pay some of it back. $2,000 to start. We can work this out without involving the bank. There is no reason to make this a legal matter. Every dollar. The fraud charges, the dress, the penalties, every dollar. Nina tried next. She leaned forward with her palms flat on the table, the same pose she used when she was trying to sound reasonable. Theo does not need to know every detail, Audrey. This is a family matter. This is between us. Theo's mother called me 3 days ago. She knows. Nina's palms lifted off the table. She sat back in her chair, and her eyes moved to the front door, then to Wanda, then back to me. She did not speak again for 2 full minutes. Wanda switched tactics. You are going to destroy your sister's marriage over money. Is that what you want? Is that what you want Olive to see? A mother who tears apart her own family because of an old sewing kit and a credit card? A credit card with my forged signature that the police are already investigating. That is not a family matter. Wanda tried one more time. She reached across the table and put her hand flat on Roy's placemat, the one nobody had moved in 3 years, the one with the coffee stain from the last Sunday morning he sat in that chair. Your father would be ashamed of what you are doing to this family. Something in my chest tightened, not guilt, recognition. That was the line she had been saving. The one she believed would end the conversation the way it had ended every conversation for 36 years. The dead father card, played with the certainty of a woman who had been dealing it for 3 years and winning every hand. I looked at Roy's photo on the wall. Then I looked at Wanda. The woman who writes numbers in a cubicle just counted every dollar you stole. The man who pours concrete built the house you will never be invited to again. And the grandmother who felt sorry for me, she left me the only thing in this family worth keeping. I reached into my jacket pocket and set Colette's shears on the table between us, the black handles and heavy steel catching the overhead light. You are looking at it. Wanda did not touch them. Dad said take care of them. I did. $34,000. You took 26 more and called it an accident. Wanda's hands slid from the table to her lap. Her fingers curled into fists, opened, closed again. The skin around her mouth tightened and her jaw locked. Her breathing through her nose became audible across the table. Her eyes moved to Roy's photo behind me and held there for 8 seconds. Then dropped to the floor. She did not look at me again. I picked up my phone. I dialed First Regional's fraud hotline on speaker. The room heard every word. This is Audrey Lawson, case number 2026 FR 4471. I am confirming I want to proceed with the full investigation and criminal referral. All $26,000 in unauthorized charges. Yes, thank you. I hung up. Nina was staring at the front door like she was calculating distance. There will be no more checks, I said. No more photographer deposits. No more hotel blocks. No more monthly transfers. No more fabric sewn for people who let dogs into the room on purpose. This is the last time I sit at this table. Do not call Garrett. Do not call Louise. Do not call Olive's school. If your attorney wants to speak to mine, here is her card. I placed the card on the table, picked up the shears, felt the wobble in the pivot screw, the same wobble it had when Colette used to set them on the kitchen table in Montreal and say, "Measure twice, Audrey, always twice." I walked out the front door and did not close it behind me. Nina received a separate demand letter 8 days later, delivered by certified mail to the apartment she shared with Theo. Joint liability with Wanda for the $26,000 in fraudulent charges plus $7,800 in property damage for the dress. A bridal alteration specialist had valued replacement materials and labor at that figure, excluding the irreplaceable sentimental value of Colette's fabric. The letter named Nina as joint applicant on the fraudulent application and cited the police case number. Theo was standing in the kitchen when Nina opened it. He read it over her shoulder. He did not yell. He did not raise his voice. He said, "Did you sign that card application?" Nina did not answer. "Nina, did you sign it?" She nodded once. Theo set his coffee mug on the counter, picked up his car keys, and drove to his parents' house. He came back 4 hours later and told Nina she had 30 days to resolve the debt or he would retain his own attorney and begin the conversation about what their marriage looked like going forward. Nina's honeymoon photos never went up on social media. 3 weeks after they returned from Breckenridge, she deleted the resort highlights from her phone. The Mountain View suite she had captioned Paradise disappeared from her camera roll like it had never existed. First Regional froze the fraudulent credit card within hours of my report. Every stored payment Wanda had linked to that card, the spa membership, the department store accounts. The auto pay on the resort balance declined in sequence over the following week. She tried to use the spa card on a Thursday afternoon, and the terminal rejected it. The card that had funded 6 weeks of her lifestyle was dead, and every transaction she had built on top of it was collapsing backward toward the branch on Oak Street where she had forged my name. Mrs. Price called Wanda the following Saturday morning. The call lasted 90 seconds. Mrs. Price's voice was not angry. It was the voice of a woman who had practiced what she was going to say and intended to say every word exactly once. "My son married your daughter, believing your family funded this wedding. We have learned that was not accurate. We will not be attending any future family gatherings. Please do not call Theo's phone. If Nina wants to speak to my son, she can do that on her own time. I have nothing else to say." The line went dead. Wanda held the phone to her ear for 30 seconds after the call ended, her hand pressing it against her jaw, listening to the silence where a connection used to be. 3 weeks later, Wednesday night, Wanda sat on her couch in the living room. She opened her phone and scrolled to my contact. The profile photo was from Olive's 10th birthday, the two of us at the kitchen table, Olive holding a cupcake with a single candle, both of us laughing at something Garrett had said from behind the camera. Wanda tapped the name. The screen read, "This number has been blocked." She stared at the photo, put the phone face down on the cushion, picked it up again. Same photo, same message. She put it down. She did not pick it up a third time. In Wanda's living room, the demand letter lay on the coffee table, unopened for the second week. Roy's photo hung on the wall, watching a room where no one sat across from it anymore. If this story hit you, subscribe to Family Secret Tales, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. In my house, in the spare bedroom I cleared out the week after the confrontation, there was a cutting table Garrett built from reclaimed lumber over a weekend, while Olive handed him screws and measured boards with a carpenter's pencil behind her ear. On the table, 3 yards of indigo cotton broadcloth pinned to a pattern I drafted myself on graph paper at the kitchen counter. Colette's shears, cleaned and oiled, the pivot screw still wobbling the way it had since 1994, resting on the pattern guide beside a pincushion shaped like a tomato that Colette had used for 40 years. Olive's school photo pinned to the corkboard above the sewing machine. Her face in the photo was the same face she made when she handed me pins without being told, steady and paying attention. A quilt. Not a bridesmaid dress, not for anyone's wedding, not for anyone who would let a dog into the room. My project. The first thing I had made for myself in 4 years. Indigo cotton with a border of cream muslin, 9 squares finished, 27 to go, each one cut and pressed and stitched on my own schedule in my own room for my own bed. The window was cracked open. Summer air moved through the curtain Louise had hemmed at my kitchen table the morning everything changed. Garrett's coffee mug sat on the bookshelf where he left it before work. A ring of brown on the rim he never wiped. My phone was charging in the kitchen. The screen dark. No notifications, no missed calls, no names I needed to answer. Quiet that costs nothing. A room where every thread belongs to me.